but I still have a soul.
The realm of the hungry ghosts is for people driven by greed. It's not too late for you.
Not so lucky after all, huh?
It'd take a miracle to change a man like me.
Good evening, everybody, to the Q&A for A Ballad of a Small Player. Let me introduce, my name is Phil Méheux, and let me introduce you to the members of our panel this evening. We have with us Andrew Daniel, who's the senior colourist at The First Look. Danny Bishop, camera operator, who is an associate member of the BSC, ACO and SOC. And of course our DP, James Friend, ASC BSC. So we welcome you all here. So let's start off. Now this is, if I'm right in saying, I think all of you, maybe Andrew not so much, but you've done 5 pictures with Ed Burker, you two, and you've done 4. You've done did you do some TV stuff originally, or you certainly did? Well, let me cut to the chase and say that all 3 of you did All Quiet on the Western Front, which, as you know, won an Oscar for cinematography 2 years ago. So well done, everybody.
Team effort, I would say. Genuine team effort.
Genuine team effort. Can I say that this film is an amazing looking film? I think the 3 of you done fantastic work on it. Because it has a sort of, what it does is shows you the glitter of the gambling casino, but at the same time it's got an underbelly, and you can just sense that it's not going to work out well. Well, it sort of does in the end of this film, but for most gamblers, I'm sure they have a very very bad time, and winning and losing and losing and winning and whatever. So Ed for a long time. You've worked very closely with them. 6 or 5 films I think you've done with him.
If you count films, but also projects. I mean, we did this mental 3D immersive Apple thing and commercials together and all sorts of stuff. So I've kind of lost kind of inner space of kind of what I've done. But I know I've most certainly spent more time with Ed than I have my parents in the last
Yes,
it's sort of a couple of decades, to be perfectly honest.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you find him? Do you find he works differently from other directors?
No, I mean he is very particular. However, we work in a very special way. It is quite regimented, and we do. I'm very OCD, and I like things ordered. I can't sort of rest until something's kind of got. But that's his natural sort of resting state as well. So when we're checking through locations and things like that, there are many locations on this. Excuse me. We were filming in hotels where, like, basically, we would walk in and there would be this amazing lobby, incredible lobby, and when we would do a scout, and obviously when you go in for a scout, the hotel manager is going to go, right, this is this place, and they kind of they take you around like you're a the sort of Tatler or some kind of sort of weird tourist magazine or something like that. So, and then suddenly when it comes down to the reality of everything, the logistics of everything just basically just narrows and narrows and narrows, and they kind of say, well, you can't have this unless you can afford it, or you can't have this unless you can have this, but you need to film there at 4:00 in the morning and only for 2 hours, and you can only do it, but you can only have this between this window and this window. So everything sort of massively sort of reduces down. And when Edward and I have that sort of bone, we find it hard to sort of not let it go. I mean, to the point where we did this series in Your Honour a couple of years ago, and we found this building, and I was like, oh, this is beautiful. This is where I want to film the police station. And I showed Ed, and he said, yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's great. Turned out to be the what did we film it? New Orleans. Yeah. City Hall, like City Chambers Hall, and I was like, well, I want to shoot here, but there are these trees in the way that are like fucking the symmetry. But I agreed with the council that we would pull the trees out and replant them somewhere else.
Yes.
And so it wouldn't get in the way of the. But that's that sort of regimented. But he sees that as well. But it was, he's as particular as I am.
Uh-huh. So was it mostly location work, or were there a few sets involved?
Everything on the picture was location. Absolutely everything, apart from one scene, which you could sort of argue is sort of a composite of location and studio. I don't know. Where even
the cabin on the
no. The cabin on Llama Island was we so that was a complete freak accident. We were supposed to film in the bay. Sorry, in actually on the bay, and we had to take this sort of weird little boat over there. And as we were going through, we were sort of weaving through all these little huts like you saw in the film, and we had this scene which was supposed to take place in the in a forest, like literally like a rainforest, like, you know. That's actually in the book where it's set, and we were trying to find this location. We just could not, for the life of us, find it. You know, we went everywhere. We went to Hong Kong, all these islands. We did not find somewhere. We found somewhere that we liked, but it was north facing. And I was like, let's just, I'm not, I don't want to go down that road. And then when we were going through these sort of little, houses in the water, I said to Ed, wouldn't it be really cool if she lives on one of these? And he was like, oh, that's quite a good idea. And we sort of percolated on that for about 3 weeks. And then we proposed it to the producers, knowing that we were going to create an absolute rod for our own back. Because filming on water, as I'm sure everyone in this room knows, is an absolute fucking nightmare, right? So, but logistically, technically, just, to service the whole thing is just if you ask from anything from a crane or a head or a lens down to a cup of water, it's a demand. It basically turns from just a simple task to a huge demand. So naturally that became so we had to sort of re-engineer our whole filmmaking process to go there. So we kind of called it like the film within the film, essentially. And we wanted to go there with, very minimalist equipment. There was sort of no dolly. It was like sticks and slider, even though I managed to get a dolly on there in the end, thank God, because there's nothing worse than adjusting a height on a pair of sticks. Like you just want to go, there you go. Even though it sounds so romantic to say you just did it with a pair of sticks, but or a set of sticks. So yeah, it became quite a guerrilla shoot on the boat, but some of the casino work was quite an operation, purely because everything in these casinos, it's not like you can just turn it on and turn it off with a light switch. Everything goes back to a central computer. To have, I would say, like looking at this place, we all look up at the moment, you see all these spotlights. I would say, right, we turn all the spotlights off because it's just horrible shadows. Let's just put a big soft source there. But in order to do that, it took Bill Gates to sort of, sign in. And it was very complicated.
Yes.
But fun at the same time. I'm glad we. But also we had to give them 8 months' notice in order to build a list of all of these things that we wanted to sort of.
That's common in that part of the world. I've heard before. But in filming, Andrew, question for you. In filming the lights and the stuff that's in all these casinos, did that give problems in terms of evening it out and matching shots to shot to shot? Because obviously all those light sources were obviously different values and different colours, probably some of them. I mean, I don't mean obvious colours, but skin tone colours and stuff. And
Well, yeah, well, I think, James, you know as well as I do, the hallways were very, very tricky because they were essentially just, when I looked at what came back out of the camera, it was just all one colour. It was either this sort of
Orange.
this was orange, or it was this sort of urine colour. And so there's a lot of scenes in it where we just had to sort of bite the bullet and then build colour back in. We were doing lots of keying, lots of just like separation, lots of blues and the blacks. There was a lot of colour work that went into a lot of the scenes where you might just watch them and think, oh, just, you know, it's just Colin walking down a hallway. Those were probably the trickiest moments for us. Yeah, they were like, we did lots and lots of sort of flip-flopping and like, does this look okay, or does this look too treated? Even though the film is quite a strong look, I feel like you can always see if you're sort of, you know, putting a hat on a hat, so to speak. And so that, I would say, from as far as the casino stuff, it was the hallways and things like that. Everything else out on the boat and what have you was pretty straightforward, I think.
because it's exterior, straightforward.
Exterior stuff.
But you did give it some sort of colour feeling.
Yes, yeah.
Was that a decision to make? You know, that each scene would have a little colour feel to it, or did that just happen as you went along?
We always knew we wanted this colourful vibe, right? So it was very much a man seduced in Macau under this illusion. So, you know, however anyone can interpret that, we always knew we wanted to go down that rabbit hole. And that Edward always gives us a lot of license to kind of have fun, basically.
Yeah.
So
I don't think he'd put it like that, but yeah.
I mean,
he just says, I just have to get used to it. That's what he kept saying.
Yeah. But
through tears.
But exactly, yeah. But we, I think there were a lot of very challenging locations that I would say, like when you walk onto a set where you've got orange carpets with orange wallpaper, with an actor with very white skin, and then we're trying to actually I learned a lot on this film about bending colours in the wrong way. You know, like if you photograph something that is blue and you try and bend it in the other way, it doesn't work. But Andrew, thank God, is, you know, I mean, he's my massive safety net, and also he sort of imbues everything that I take, and I like to think that he sort of lifts it. But it was really challenging. But the places, like, I mean, we had this other thing where all the lights, all the LED, everything's all LED in Macau, everything flickered. And we found this out when I started to do camera tests about 10 days out. Because you can only get access to some of these places very, very short notice. Suddenly everything's pulsing, and I'm kind of going, oh my God, let's adjust this with shutter angle. We actually basically couldn't find a shutter angle that worked, so we had to put it through this whole post-production process. And also, you don't want to adjust the shutter angle that much, do you? But because it's otherwise it starts messing with the overall sort of dynamic. Yeah.
What was the angle? Do you remember? Was it 1.44 or?
No, well, we shot everything at 172.8, whatever in God knows it is.
That was the standard HMI, wasn't it?
Yeah. But
flicker rate.
But it was very hard. But I must admit, I'm not going to put my hand up and say everything was all done. It's all done in camera. But it did really take a lot of massaging afterwards in order to get to the way we wanted it to look. And just to sort of idiot check myself, I went back there with a stills camera and took stills, and then went back to my laptop in Lightroom, and I had the equal problem. So I was like, I'm not going mad. I'm not going like the camera isn't reacting, crazily.
So did you supply to? Well, we don't have laboratories anymore now, but did you supply Andrew photographs of saying, look, this is what I think it should be. This is what it's like.
Well, so what we did is we photographed a couple of test shots with the actors in different lighting environments within the different hotels and things like that. We threw them back to the Look and Andrew, and then we treated them, and we would talk, and then we would develop a kind of show LUT. I got really burnt a few times by developing too many LUTs. I found it very it becomes very confusing basically, and it's not a particularly pleasant sort of experience in post-production, I would say. But I learned that the hard way through digital filmmaking. So we developed one LUT, didn't we? Really, maybe another one for night, but I don't even think we even really used that.
It was one LUT, and then it was like 2 stops up and 2 stops down, and that was it. It was just same thing, but just a bit brighter, a bit darker.
And then I would pipe them through to Andrew, and he would work his magic. We would talk on the phone.
So did you doctor your stills before you sent them, or did you say to him, make this look good? And
No, I would like to say that I sat there in Lightroom and made them sort of this thing, but I didn't. I've worked with Andrew for nearly 20 years.
Sure. So
there comes with this element of beautiful trust and taste and everything. And, you know, I like to think that I can talk to him for sort of 2 minutes on the phone, you know, fresh off of 18-hour day on set, and he would kind of understand what I want and interpret it. But then he would send me an image, and I would react to it and say, yeah, absolutely great, or just say, oh, just tweak this a little bit or whatever. Yeah. And but I mean,
so you're into images are interchanging by
99% of these time he's right, you know. And but the key is when you get there, you can there's this weird thing that directors and editors get, right? So especially with digital filmmaking, where they apply the CDL or the LUT or whatever in the cutting room. Sometimes they can sit there for a year, and they fall in love with this this image in front of them. And to be honest, it might look like shit, okay, but they kind of become very, very, very protective over it. Yes. So the second suddenly you go into the DI or the grade or whatever you want to go, and you start swinging the hues this way and the colours this way, and the suddenly they go, what the fuck are you doing to my, you know, what are you doing to my baby, you know? So so we kind of learned to sort of avoid that a little bit.
No, I had that same thing.
Yeah.
Where the rushes, if you like to call them that, because they're not actually rush film, but they look as you've left them, and they give it one sort of overall look. And then the editors see that for 6 months. And then when you take them to the first reel on the DI, they go, oh, you know, they just can't see that this is what it should have been like in the first place.
But it's not only that. I don't find it. Well, it is definitely the editors and the director, but it's also the studio. You know, you've got these people that are watching it on PIX, which is something which is sort of
we know about
absolutely broken down into the worst kind of resolution. And to be perfectly honest, and I'm guilty of this as well because I don't have the time, you end up watching it on your phone or your iPad, and kind of getting to some kind of sort of, you know, resolution in your brain, and then and you don't want to just form that judgment. So that's why we tried to become as close to the final image as possible, which we knew had to be a little bit bombastic, a little bit operatic, a little bit.
Yes, I think with this, it was probably the furthest we've veered away from the original LUT, only because we always knew the early conversations we had were, you know, what do you want it to look like? I want it to look like this. Okay, that's quite a bold move. We had a LUT, which I think that's what Ed got used to seeing. That's why on the first day when he came in, he didn't hate it. He was just like, okay, wow, this is a lot. But ultimately, we had this idea of pushing that base look just a little bit further, and always to the edge without ever trying to tip over into sort of, you know, just absurdity, which I hope we sort of achieved.
It was definitely. I mean, this is the most craziest movie I've ever photographed, and I don't feel like I've sailed so close to the wind, sort of visually, you know, because weirdly I'm not very good with colour. You know, I feel very happy in my sort of normal
black and white photographer.
and not definitely not black and white, but I like my kind of the way my brain responds to skin tones and all this kind of but this was definitely pushing in a place where I'm not used to. But also it was inspired by my first the first time I landed in Macau, and we had a car from the airport to the hotel, and I remember driving over the bridge in the back of the car like a puppy on the windscreen or the window, just looking at the surrounding environment, and pretty in awe of what we were looking at. Do you remember that? I mean, like going there because it's a real alien place. I mean, it's so surreal. So I tried to kind of encapsulate what I was seeing then, and I tried to push that onto the screen because we were there for 9 months. So after a while, you walk out and it just looks like you're walking down, I don't know, Slough High Street. I don't know, but it's actually it's insane, So it's yeah. So that yeah.
You also used a process called DFD.
Well, we did and we didn't. This is
You
very
did and you didn't.
so this is very interesting. So I was privy to a lab process where they were doing a new Kodak stock, a new Ektachrome stock, which I was very fascinated with, and with a dear friend who's a cinematographer. I wasn't supposed to be in the room, but I somehow got in there, and it grabbed me so much. I thought, actually, this sort of digital, where you capture on digital, you scan back to it. It's not particularly a new thing these days, but you go back to film, and then you basically.
So just explain that in detail again.
Okay, so you photograph on digital.
Yes.
You laser back to the negative.
Do you grade it first?
No.
Okay.
And then
put it raw onto the negative.
Raw onto the negative,
Yes.
and then you bring it back off the negative.
And then you rescan the negative.
When you rescan the negative,
Right.
And what that no, I'm telling you that is how you rescan the negative that way, and then you basically have the sort of film artifacts within. Do you know, there's someone in the audience was going, this guy's chatting absolute shit, but it's like, but yeah, exactly. So I got Roger and the guys from Cinelab, but yeah, it's but basically it's a way to sort of get the majesty of both, basically, and we were the first people, were we, Roger?
Ektachrome, definitely.
Yeah, Ektachrome. And did it work?
Yeah, it was stunning.
Did it? No.
It's quite a tricky stock, though.
So it didn't work, but he said it's not going to work anyway.
Did you not use it in the film?
No, but it.
You go down all rabbit hole.
Yeah. So yeah. So because I was like, it was a that's how I wanted the film to look. So this is the way the film stock looks, and then how can we, there's got to be a way in this process. But these guys were like, it's not going to work. But we've never done it before, and it is basically a trial and error process. And I think you got closer to it though now, haven't you? Yeah, much closer to it because it takes time.
It's a tricky stock, isn't it? I think that's what the feedback was.
So basically, we knew how we wanted it to look from the film stock, and we knew what we had. So then you guys worked together, and we found a sort of digital way of replicating it, essentially, and adding the grain. But we did try. We definitely did try, and it was a little bit heartbreaking to say that it kind of didn't work. Even though I'll try it on every picture that I do, that I'll shoot digitally. But it definitely inspired us. It definitely inspired us. And
did you increase the contrast at all on the film? I mean, I got the feeling that the blacks were lifted a lot.
Well,
It's a very heavily contrasty film. It's quite
yeah, but
quite
we
inky.
added this petrol, didn't we?
Yeah.
The sort of blue in the blacks.
So I mean, the look itself is like a Frankenstein of percentages of different bits of LUTs to get this sort of Ektachrome-ish vibe, which does very specific things to blues and reds. And then we wanted to build on top of that and have a little touch of sort of like Wong Kar-wai and stuff in certain scenes. Okay, sorry. And adding a bit of green into the blacks as well as blue, and that does have an effect in some scenes, I think, where you're going to end up either with a much inkier black or a slightly lifted black. But James is always very, very keen. He's a details man, and if there's a shadow that he wants to see into, then he'll say.
Well, I'm the same with that.
Yeah.
But we did create a lot. Well, I mean, I'm quite particular when I like dark pictures. So the lot that I'll always build, or we will always build, will always be like a stop, protect a stop under. So if I go a little bit too far, so I can sit there a year later and say, Andrew,
got to blame it on Andrew.
I think I pushed it a little bit too far here.
I think you pushed it a little bit too far.
He can say, "Don't worry, there's an extra little cheeky 2/3 of a stop or a third of a stop in the shadows."
So what lenses did you use throughout the movie?
So I've got this very trusty set of spherical glass called the Gwyn Tribe 7s. I don't know if anyone's aware of them in the audience.
Who makes those?
It's IBE, but they were designed by Neil Fantham and Bradford Young. But we've had our own set. I would say we've got very much.
Well, you keep them at home, won't you?
I'm not going to tell you where
we'll keep. You're not going to say.
My mother keeps them under her bed.
Yes.
Yeah,
bed.
But yeah, we shot pretty much all of All Quiet on the Western Front on those lenses, yes. And they've got a beautiful kind of roundness, softness to them, but
were the apertures very wide?
Yeah, I would say
given that you were working mostly with available light, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I think they work nicely around. I mean, I shoot sort of 2.8-ish, in that, and they work beautifully there. But on this occasion, I actually had a phone call from my friends at Movie Tech, who are now Sunbelt, but my friends at Movie Tech, and they said, "Are you around today?" And I was at home, and I live around the corner, and they said, "Well, we've got this, we've got a bit of a secret demonstration," and it was Andy Cooper basically said, "Can you just come down because I'd love your, excuse me, I'd love your opinion on this glass." So I went down there, and they had this new set of lenses called the Coral Reef. Second Reef Corals, and they're anamorphics, but they're 1.5 times. They're not 2 times.
Right.
So anyone in the room that's used to shooting anamorphic notices that you get quite a lot of distortion and barreling whenever you rack, or you sort of kind of see that, which is also lovely. Like when you watch Blade Runner, when you watch any great anamorphic picture, it's part of the overall look. However, I like to, my inherent view on the world is the way the audience should see it, which is our eyes are spherical, So I immediately gravitated towards these lenses because they're somewhere between spherical and anamorphic, but they had this beautiful look to them, and they were very much in the beta phase. They were literally prototypes, and I love them. I absolutely fucking love them. And I said, "Look, I've got this film coming up, and just should we talk?" And a week later, I ended up buying an entire set, basically a newborn set as well, didn't you? Yeah, and we shot the movie on them, and they're fucking gorgeous.
So, how much of the movie is 1.5 anamorphic?
To be perfectly honest, I haven't gone through the exact. But
I noticed at the end sequence with the you get the oval reflections from out of focus spots.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I noticed that only at the end. I didn't notice it anywhere else.
Well, it's more of the film is anamorphic than spherical. but we would tend to do it more on a like emotional level. Like there's a scene where Lippet is sat in that horrible, sweaty colonial place, and he basically calls him out. He says, "I know who you are. You know, you're just a young Irish boy, innocent Irish boy." I wanted this kind of real reality sense that, him, Lord Doyle or Colin, as he's been called out. He's the truth is hitting him. So I wanted to do that on Spherical, and the truth is, I would go in with a good a good sort of indication of what we were going to do, but it would very much be blocking based. We would kind of go, well, actually, do you know what? Colin's delivering this in a completely different way than I ever thought. So should we just do this on Spherical? And sometimes we would do the entire scene on anamorphic, but then we would do the wide on Spherical because it worked nicer with the architecture.
Did it give you, were there any, how do I say, any errors from the anamorphic that you were aware of that you had to avoid? I mean, in terms of focusing or...
That's the best thing about making movies from a technical standpoint is like everything's man-made, and then it is you're projecting it with a sort of nano, within a sort of nano, meter, and it's like imperfections are great, like they are absolutely great. But we embrace that on this picture. I mean, we didn't have one of the main focal lengths for the entire movie, and we were kind of like on the phone being like, where is this lens, where is this? And when it arrived, it felt like it was sort of Christmas, and so we were really sort of, we had this real sort of bastardized lens package, a bit like we did on All Quiet, but I'd say a little bit more refined.
We use a lot of wide sphericals as well.
Yeah, I mean,
super wide.
I'm not a long lens DP. Like traditionally, I love the way the human field of view and human perception sort of orientates things. So, if you're this far away, I like to actually put you this far away and put the audience there, opposed to over there on a 250. Like I find it really is obviously a visual language, which we all understand. But this was very much about being in Colin's environment, his space, so we definitely had some sort of hero glass in at that end, and yeah.
There's quite a lot of camera movement, I noticed. And Danny, did you have lots of different ways of doing it, or did you always use Steadicam or dollies? Or I like the way that in the beginning of the film, there's all this gentle movement that goes into all the scenes. Almost like when you cut to the Lamma Island, it's more static. At least that's the feeling I got. I don't think it probably was completely static.
What I'd say is, I was chatting to Ed about it the other night, is that I think that the joy of working with James and Ed is they come with a shot list, and then you get out there, and I'm always lucky enough to be involved in the prep part of the job. And once you're involved in the prep, you work it out all ahead of time. And I think that it's certainly going off and working with other DOPs and other directors. It's like the one thing I like about working with James and Ed is we always use the right bit of kit. We don't just go, well, this is what we've got, let's just do it on that. And I think that we, as you can probably tell by the look of the film, is everything we tried to be so precise. And we didn't want to just be like, oh, let's just use Steadicam, because even though I love doing Steadicam's got its own floaty thing about it, and we would use it when it was the right time. And then we decided to use the Ronin because it was stabilized, and we would put it on a rickshaw track with that, and it meant it was so locked and with Colin. That came with its own problems because of the Wi-Fi in China is crazy, and the Ronin just wouldn't work. And we were trying to do all these shots, and I don't know much about it, but all the frequencies weren't working.
Yeah.
And it was a real issue because the lighting desk was throwing the Ronin out, and it was wasting like really valuable time on set. But movement wise, like, I think it's kind of like the same we've worked with Ed for like the last 10 years, isn't it? It's like we always just want to go for the best shot and make it make the camera move, and why is it moving, and what is the tool? Is it handheld? Is it Ronin? Is it Steadicam?
I mean, one of the most powerful moves I always find in cinema is a tracking shot in from a mid shot into a close up, because that just says like so much. But at the same time, I love to move when the actors move, because otherwise, you know, I fell out with quite a big director, by the way, where I threatened to leave the job, and I was convinced to stay on the job by the producer, but all he wanted to do was just during the dialogue scene like this. I mean, like, you know, nothing like seismic, but he just wanted the camera to fucking fly around like that. And I'm like, well, what? Why is it doing that? And he says, well, it makes it more interesting. And I was like, well, it doesn't. Well, that just basically means that
performance is so bad.
Yeah, performance is so bad. It's exactly what I said, because you don't have enough faith in what we're photographing.
Nice.
And that really, I learned a lot from that experience. And you know, I like to be quite surgical with things, and you know, unless you're moving in on a line or you're moving in on thought or an emotion, that's one thing. But then if you move when the actors move, that's great. But also moving when the actors move is one thing. However, one of the most important things that I always find is stopping when the actors stop. So if you're railing with someone or steadycamming with someone, when they stop and they're going to stop dead, the camera should fucking stop dead. It shouldn't stop and go like that. Do you know? Because that's the audience kind of going, well, what?
I didn't see any of that actually.
Well,
I thought the operating was faultless in this movie.
But
Danny, I have to tell you, I think it was faultless.
Oh,
is that you know, there was obviously Steadicam use, but there was none of that floating, as I call it, which I've never been fond of. There's a few handheld scenes which sort of stand out in a way, and that was probably because of the emotion of the scene. You wanted to, you know, just juggle it a bit. At least that's what I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, doing handheld was obviously, it was brilliant because we just did wide and close, and you're filming with an actor like Colin Farrell, and you've got like a 50mm on, and you're 1.5 foot away from him. And it was,
or sometimes a 12mm,
or sometimes a 12mm. The shot of him in the apartment when he's having the heart attack was a 12mm, and I think I was about that close to him.
Do you remember when he was eating?
Yeah.
The scene where he's gorging with food, where he literally had like a spoonful of like salmon mousse, then chocolate cake in the same, and then like grabbed a lobster claw and went like that. And I'm basically going like, and I'm watching this on the monitor, and I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, like how is he doing it? But he's such a professional. Never complained once. But
his performance is sensational.
He's
excellent performance.
One of the finest artists I've ever worked with in my life, and I just don't believe that I'm going to really meet many people that can do that.
There aren't many people.
No.
First time I've worked with an actor where they like sometimes he would stay in character in between takes, and you'd go over to give him a note, and he wouldn't snap out of it, and you knew that he was listening to you, and you knew that he was taking it in, and sometimes he would reply to you as the character.
He just told me he didn't like you,
and it was just like, it was such a nice way to work with somebody that close. And sometimes, like, you know, like especially in this heart attack stuff, he's just like wide open eyes, sweat, and he wouldn't come out of that.
Yeah,
he's a really cool guy.
That's true. What I noticed also is that in parts of the film you half light the actors. That was obviously a conscious decision on your part.
Yeah, I think a conscious decision. I mean, you know, contrast is always fun, isn't it? You know, and colour in this place is mental. And what I kind of reaffirmed to myself in Macau is that removing light is twice as important as adding light, because light in the wrong place can be so destructive. And when you're photographing someone, if you've got a light over here and light over here and light over here, and you've got shadows all over the place, it can just look ugly. So what I would tend to do is separate it all into sort of 3 different sort of planes. You know, you've got your foreground, your midground, your background. It's nothing new. We're not reinventing the wheel. But I would very much isolate Colin or the action, essentially. So I could light that independently, and then I would like to have a little bit of control of the midground, just in case they're sort of walking around and sort of doing things. Or alternatively, I might just want a bit more control over it. And then the background, we would go there normally because that's the way the background looks, and that's why we went there. You know, because this background is this sort of, you know, magnificent neon vibe or whatever. So we went there sort of quite surgically, but China is not a particularly easy place to work. You know, everything has to go back to the government. So if you're turning lights off lampposts or anything like that, it's unbelievably hard. But the filming in casinos, you're not allowed to cover or obstruct any lighting over the tables or any CCTV cameras or anything like that. And we actually needed, I think, 8 months permission. So all the places that we filmed in, we actually needed to go there almost like a year before and designate exactly where we're going to film and what we're going to do and all this, which is pretty damn hard when you've got a script which is in its sort of infancy. And we all know what scripts are like; they change like the wind, you know. So, so we had to be very. Weirdly, actually, to this day, I don't actually know how we got away with it. You know, so but filming in the casinos, I shot all the wides, natural light in the casinos, and we managed to take over a pool of tables in the foreground because actually the amount these tables turn over is enormous, almost more than what you could ever offer them as a location fee. It's like 10 times more what you could ever offer them as a location fee. So you can't compete immediately.
Yes.
So yeah, we always had the sort of odds stacked against us. Pardon the pun, but it was. So we would shoot these wides, but then I would stay there with the VFX department and photograph a sort of tile, an array of plates, and we found this completely by fluke, this LED wall in the MGM Grand. So anyone that wants to shoot in Macau, remember this, right? The MGM Grand in Macau
Yes.
had one of the largest LED walls in the world. But when we go on an LED volume stage, the pixels are literally that far apart. These were that far apart because it's for theatre. It's for, you know, a load of dancing and whatever, you know, Cirque du Soleil and all this kind of stuff. So we went there, and immediately it was like the studio were kind of like, well, we looked at the specs and it's just, you know, it's shit. It's no good. But I said to them, well, normally you shoot within sort of 30 foot of a wall. The stage is so huge, where you can actually stand like 100 feet away, and it holds up because that's the way the audience are looking at it. So naturally, as you go back, the perception is the pixels get smaller, therefore the resolution gets higher. So we were able to pull this off, and I mean, it was, when I mean completely coincidental. My mic died.
Your mic's gone for a bit. Yeah. Try that.
But yeah, that's how we basically shot all the sort of real intimate stuff in the casinos until it was the smaller rooms where we actually we could take them over at like 3 o'clock in the morning.
Just one final technical question. There's the scene in the bathroom where he meets Betty, Tilda Swinton.
Yes.
He chases her into the bathroom, and there's this huge mirror, and the cameras should be seen in that mirror, and it's not. So, how did you do that? I mean, I can work it out, but I mean, tell us how you do it.
Well, very simply.
Huh?
Very simply.
Yes.
You put the camera where it should be for the scene, and obviously you're looking at yourself, and then.
Especially if I just wipe it out.
No.
Go on.
We moved the camera back the same distance and span it around and looked at that back wall, and then photographed it at the correct distance. and then you cut that section out of the
You
frame,
put that in the
and then
middle.
you put it in the mirror, and then repeat it and repeat it and repeat it and repeat it.
Clever little chaps,
And
aren't
it's but that was. Do you know what? That is a shot in the picture that I absolutely hate.
you?
I'm not.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm not going to. And I'll tell you why. Because I said to Ed, "Wouldn't it be cool to put the camera here?" But do you know what? I think it would take the audience out of the picture. And he was like, "Yeah, I really want. Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it." And whenever I see it, I'm looking. I think by human instinct,
Looking for the reflection.
I'm looking for the reflection. But
So
it's
is
not
I,
there.
but I'm a cameraman like you.
I
so,
know, but I'm not looking at the actors,
Yeah.
and I'm not listening to the dialogue.
Yes.
I'm looking.
But I
at,
don't think the
well,
audience does that.
well, I think they do. They're like, well, I'm a fucking
think so?
vampire all of a sudden.
Yeah.
There's my reflection, you know. And that's not what I want as an audience. I don't ever want the audience
That's a
member to go,
salient point. Actually.
yeah, I don't want the audience to go, oh shit, where am I? I want to go, well, I want to listen to Colin. I want to listen to
And do you
Tilda.
think was the audience looking for the camera in the mirror? Were you guys doing that? Yeah. Well, there you go.
There we go. Well, which you know, I love the fact that we have a bit of I'm glad we have a broader opinion on this, because it shows you that our tastes are not always the same, and I'm most certainly never always right. Thank God. But
we should have some questions from the audience. If you have any questions, please put your hand up. We have a microphone. The gentleman there, because he's in the middle of the row, unfortunately. Can we give him a microphone? Here it comes. It's happening.
Hi there, Chris. Again, congratulations on that. Really quite an enjoyable watch, and again, faultless cinematography. But I think one thing that drew me to the film many months ago when I saw the trailer, and it's going back to your lighting, I noticed quite a very unique style of lighting with very strong highlights, very strong backlights as well that kind of skin over the face, or sort of skim over the face. And I wanted to know why did you pick that sort of style, something that's almost commercial, I would call it, you know, compared to, you know, commercials you see on TV today.
Well, weirdly, I don't shoot a lot of commercials. I sort of gave that up about 15 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe. I don't know. Can't remember the last time I shot a commercial. But a lot of everything comes from the location and the script, right? So, like, I'm not going to say that I sort of woke up one day and I saw this, you know, I was delivered this from God or whatever. Some bullshit cameraman comes up with half the time, and it's you need to react to the environment around you, and you need to react to the script, the story. But also, when we were there, that is how colourful it was. Well, actually, maybe not that colourful. I think you pushed it a little bit.
Yeah, we pushed it.
Yeah, we pushed it a little bit further. But also, the other thing is, it's it's unbelievably humid there. So there's water on everything, and especially on people's skin. So naturally, you're walking along. You could be walking along with, you know, Angelina Jolie, but she looked sweaty. You know, you basically just can't film outside in that place without a huge amount of, you know, reflection. So that is something that I personally really wanted to embrace, because it is that humid. I mean, I don't think I've ever filmed in a place that uncomfortable in my entire life. So, so yeah, I suppose that's where it sort of came from. Like, if you take Dao Ming's apartment block, for example, you know, those big, that big square, that big sort of, you know, with all the sort of colonnade kind of thing, you know, all of those lights we all put in. We put all those in with infinity bars and steerers, because none of that actually existed. So if you actually went there, really, I've got some stills from location scouts, but actually it looks the 10th of that, you know. So they were all just crudely cable tied into place, and you know. But then I'm back to a lighting desk, which I have at my palms. You know, I've got my monitor. I've got a very particular setup where I have my big monitor, and I've got a lighting desk where I can literally, every lamp has got its own fader, so I can set a stop on the camera, and then I can set every single the intensity of every single lamp independently. One thing I don't touch is color, because then you're getting into a completely different realm. But then I have a desktop next to me, and I can say, make that warmer, make that redder, make that cooler, do this, you know, make that one over there flicker, you know, all the stuff that I'm nowhere near clever enough to do on an iPad, right? So, so that's how I kind of engineered all that stuff. But how did I come up with that look? I would say I went there a year before, and I stayed there for 2 weeks with Edward, the director. And then I went back on various different location scouts, which were pretty exhausting. But you just kind of soak in the place and read the script, soak in the place, reading the script, soak in the place. And when you start seeing the costumes, when you start seeing the design, when you start working with the designer, talking more with the director, just through osmosis, all of these things start to sort of align in your, well, at least in my, I don't know how you guys work, but it starts to sort of get more aligned. And then you finally arrive to some form of conclusion which you think is, I don't know, correct. I don't know, but then and then
Well,
you go.
serves your purpose anyway.
Yeah. I mean, everybody
everyone
else.
has a viewpoint.
Yeah. But that's the
fact that all our viewpoints are different is what makes this an interesting.
Yeah, well, it's what makes us go. Go to the cinema, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I've never been to the cinema to see one of my films. To be brutally honest, actually, I wanted to say I went to the premiere the other night of this. The first time I saw it, and was going to go and see it on a screen about 3 times this size. I was on a Zoom call with Warner Brothers in the lobby for 2 hours, and I never saw a single frame. and so I've never seen it in the cinema. The last time I saw it was in the grading theatre. So, you know, it's great. Yeah, there you go. So,
Any other question from the audience? Somebody at the back, gentleman at the back. Who's got the microphone?
Over here.
If we lost the microphone handler.
Hi guys. Interested, the environment you're in Asia, a tremendous, you know, highly saturated, high luminance, high, you know, fluorescence. How truthful do you think the digital cameras were in representing the or reproducing the look of that in that environment? And probably more a question for Andrew. How different do you think the HDR grade is compared to the SDR grade on this particular film?
can I quickly just say, we did an extensive test of cameras, but and this is listen. I mean, I own a Red. I shoot mainly on Alexa, and I'm doing my next picture on the Venice, so I just don't even know where I bloody line. But the Alexa 35 was the only camera that I knew that could handle those colours, mainly those reds, actually, without them going magenta. But I did defer to my dear friend and colleague, Mr. Andrew Daniel from The Look in London.
What was the question? No. How color? Yeah. The color. I think we spoke about it already. The color, we had to push it quite hard, and I don't know. I don't actually think Macau looks quite as beautiful, maybe, as we made it look. I don't know.
Some of it looks mental.
Yeah.
But we tried to make it look sometimes a little bit more
Mental,
bombastic and a bit more operatic. But you handled it.
Yeah. No problem. I think there's a scene where he's about to have a heart attack, and we've just completely blown out that hallway to make it look sort of quite otherworldly. That was quite a mad one. The real question you asked was how different is the SDR from the HDR? Obviously, I always pride myself on them being almost identical, and certainly at the look we do as well. So as far as I'm concerned, you're always sort of seeing the same thing. You're always going to get a bit of roll off and a bit of loss and a bit of, all that sort of stuff when you go to the SDR. And so you will get some of the highlights being rolled off. But because we'd introduced a lot of halation in the HDR anyway and rolled off some of those highlights, I don't really think you're losing that much And I think the blacks, you know, they translate and they're nice and inky no matter what. But
I-
that would be my.
I remember when HDR first came out, and I was only graded an STR. I'd only graded an STR, and then there was like there's this thing called HDR, and I was like, what's this? Jesus Christ, what have we got to deal with now? And then, but now I used to do it the other way, grade an SDR, and then go to it. You remember that, don't you? And now I love grading in HDR because you're like, oh my God, my mind's been opened. It's like you've just suddenly seen this new color, this new realm, you know, sort of like dreamscape. And then, and it enables you to do everything a lot better, I would say. And then the SDR should be the most sympathetic version of that, but the HDR shouldn't be the heightened version of the SDR. It should be the other way around. Do you know what I mean? But that's yeah. Does that answer your question? I don't know.
Does it?
Yeah. Just one more question. Gentleman in the front row here. Who's got the microphone? There it is.
Hello. I really enjoyed the film actually, and the question is for James and Danny regarding how you approach the camera work or well, how did you approach it in this film? And then also when James, you asked for your operator to join you on prep.
I think Danny and I share the same sensibilities. It's why we've worked together for sort of 20 years, but also we're not afraid of each other, which is great because I can. I mean, the process on many pictures, but definitely on All Quiet on the Western Front tested us a lot to the point where, luckily, our apartments were one above each other, and you know we'd have dinner together every night, and we would hash it through together. And really, I think I found out a lot about his approach, and I think. Yeah, and it was very liberating. It was very, very, very liberating. But we would talk about the shot, but the main thing is that Danny would understand exactly what I'm talking about before I've even finished my sentence, and would understand what lens I wanted. And so to have that part of your brain, part of my brain, that can just melt away it, and then I can focus on lighting, which once I've realized what the shot is, I walk away from the technical side of things. All I care about is but all I want to execute is the lighting for the next 20 minutes of whilst I've got that luxury, and then let him take over. But how did I bring him on set? Because I just said, well, I'm not doing the film without him, to be honest. You know.
I think working in Macau was unique because we only took five key people in the camera and lighting department. Phil Hardy on focus and Guy Bennett on the dolly, and Pete Marsden DIT, and Helen was the gaffer. And I think the unique thing about going all the way to China was we ended up with a Chinese crew. Some of them weren't very experienced, some of them were experienced, and I think when Ed turns up in the morning, and Ed and James have created a shot list months ago, and he turns up with a shot list for the day and it's got 18 shots on, you know you're going to get 18 shots before you go home. So from the get-go in the morning, I'm thinking, well, I've got 18 shots to do today and I know I'm going to shoot all of them. We won't leave here without doing them. Like, he doesn't deviate from that. Sometimes, you know,
we won't move on.
and we don't move on. So if you're on shot 7 and it's not right, you just keep going until you've got shot 7. And I think that working out there was quite unique because we would be in situations where we had problems with Wi-Fi, we've had problems with people not speaking English. So ultimately what we would do is we would block it, we would work out what we would do, and then James would go off and light, and I would make sure that the camera moves however we've all agreed it's going to move, and tried to think 5 steps ahead. And ultimately my job, I see it, is to buy James time to light. And
take one is never take one.
And take one is never take. It's a rehearsal.
And then when it goes wrong, when they say cut, instead of being like, oh, do you know what, guys? That was a really, really, really good rehearsal. Well done. You went from there to there. It was sharp and this and that. instead of that, it's sometimes tables. Why the fuck was that not right? And you're like, well, it's a rehearsal, and you're like, you know, and people can get that, you know, it's like, it's hard. It's really, really, really hard, you know. So it's
I think we can both sit here and say that it was harder than shooting All Quiet.
no,
So
100%.
So like everybody always talks to me about All Quiet, and I'm like, yeah, All Quiet was really hard, but this was really hard. So, but hard in a different way. Like it was exhausting and it was hot, and we just wanted the camera to always be doing its thing, and you know, I'm lucky enough that James and Ed afford me to do that, and it's like, and I think, you know, every shot kind of counted. And
Well, there's a fourth person that should be sat here actually, and that should be my therapist.
that ghosted you.
On that note, ladies and gentlemen, my thanks to
Thank you.
Andrew, Danny, and James Frank.